Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. All right, coming in hot with a question for you guys today.
Man.
You were prepared.
I know, just straight out. Straight out
the gate. That's the way we do things around
Before
here.
you do, I'll just acknowledge we're joined by a guest here today. Kenney from the Kentucky Christmas Tree Association does not know what he's in for.
No.
He's about to find out.
It's a good, easy question. I'm going to lob something nice to all of you. Yeah, guys, come
for
on.
a change. Okay.
Turn over a new leaf.
Not putting us on the spot.
I was just going to ask you, with the recent little break from winter that we've had, what is your first thing that you do, your favorite thing that you do when you get that little 60 degrees in winter time? What do you got?
Gosh, if you were a young kid, you'd say touch grass, but I don't know.
Talk myself out of planting things. Because I totally did. This last week, I was like, my kids go outside anyways, even in the cold all the time. But we really went outside all day. And then I was just like, oh, I want to dig and plant and this and that and do all these things. And I was like, wait a minute. It's February. And my son was like, it's spring. And I was like, no, baby, it's winter. And he was like, but it's spring. And I was like, no. And then it snowed. So he's learning.
He's like, my mom is a genius. She knew. Either that or you're going to get blamed for bringing back. Yeah, you're going to get blamed for bringing back on the winter, Jessica. It's all on you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You took spring away. So yeah. I
did.
Yeah, it seems
Kenny, what about you when you get those warm days? What is your favorite thing to do?
Well, what is on my schedule today is that we have seedlings coming in March. So that's where my mind is already at, is I really need to try to get a little herbicide down before we get those trees in mid-March. So that's where you start to try to almost want to jump ahead of the season a little bit. And as I'm driving away from the house this morning, I'm looking at the snow-covered ground out there and I say, well, it wouldn't have been very effective anyway. So,
yeah, there you go. See, it's like you're not behind, It's
right.
It's
always behind is the problem. Always behind.
Yeah, but see, eventually, always behind becomes full circle, and then you're on time.
When you're so far behind, you're in first place. Yeah.
What species of the seedlings you're putting in?
I am just have some Norway spruce and some white pine this spring.
Oh, good deal.
So,
which leads perfectly into the fact that we're talking about some Christmas trees today. Speaking of conifers, we don't talk about conifers as often as probably Brett would like, as the biggest of the conifer lovers amongst our group. I just
in size and enthusiasm,
and outside physically and love for conifers,
emotionally.
Well, Brett, maybe we can convert them a little today.
Well, if you maybe you'll have better luck than I have.
Okay, all right.
You mentioned white pine. I perk up immediately. I don't know what it is. I grew up with white pines and not necessarily looking through the lens of Christmas tree production, but I just love the sound. We had some white pines around the farm growing up. Love the sound of wind moving through kind of larger white pines. They're one of my favorites. They to this very day, I don't care what we're talking about. When somebody says white pine, I perk up. So Brett, me and you both, we're on the evergreen train today. So yeah.
See, the only thing from when I hear white pine, I think white pine decline and all of the trees people have called out over the years. It's trees are dying. I'm like, well, they're about 25 years old.
We try to steer it in a positive direction, but Alexis is not bringing us back around. She is turning a 180.
Okay, I'm a realist. It's who I am.
Turn that smile upside down.
When I think, to answer your own question earlier, when the warm weather comes, I just think this is probably one of the, there's only so many more times I'm going to feel the warmth of spring. I'm just in decline now. That's how I feel when you just answer that.
Yes.
Really heavy here.
See more springs than I'm going to see.
We're at the beginning looking for the end. Okay, sure.
You value them more moving forward. All right. You're just, they're more, you feel them more deeply as you move forward. Okay. Gosh, guys.
Anyways, so Christmas trees.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Thank you. Talking about something wonderful today. Yeah, Christmas trees.
Things that bring people joy during the holidays.
I guess we could
Yes.
go that direction if you really want to, Jessica.
I guess we
Yeah.
could. We could try to turn it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would just love to hear a little bit, Kenny, about like about your farm, and
Sure.
then we could also talk about the association too. But I'd like to hear kind of, you mentioned you're planting some seedlings. I'm sure
Mhm.
you've had some seedlings planted in the past that are, how long you been doing this? How far along are your trees? All that kind
Um,
of stuff.
my wife and I, we began a conversation in 2020, right there in the beginning of COVID. A good friend of mine, which was also a faculty advisor of mine at the University of Kentucky, is a Christmas tree farmer. And we have 10 acres there just outside of Mount Sterling is where we live and where we farm. Both of us are gainfully employed full time doing something else. So this is something that we do on our nights and weekends. And we went to this individual and asked him about 1,000 questions as we were contemplating a small agricultural enterprise. And we decided that's what we were going to do. So we planted our first trees in spring of 2021. So this will be our 6th year of planting seedlings, and our plots are really pretty full. So we're just doing some fill-in planting this year. This is by far the smallest planting that we will have thus far. So
Well, 6
we,
years. Yeah. 7-year, 8-year production cycle.
Mhm.
So you're getting ready to come on next year then,
Well,
probably.
we actually did
Or this year?
harvest a couple dozen trees this year, so we're
Oh,
a
awesome.
little bit ahead of schedule, and so that part is exciting after you've worked for 5 years and you do have some things that you see enough other things that aren't going in your favor that some things did, and so that was one of the first things that my mentor gave me, was that you really should come to the Kentucky Christmas Tree Growers Association meeting coming up next month from the time that we were discussing that with him. And we did find it very useful to be able to meet other growers, talk to them about the challenges, what we should do, what we certainly shouldn't do. And so we've capitalized on that, and we've been very active in the Kentucky Christmas Tree Growers Association since then.
Who was that? Who was that person that you worked with? You can
Dr.
give him a
Bill
shout out.
Moody. Dr. Bill Moody.
Okay,
He was
great.
he is an animal. He's retired. He's an animal science professor at the University of Kentucky. I'm an animal science major. I grew up milking cows and raising tobacco and, traditional agriculture as far as I know that to be in Eastern Kentucky. And so that was my background, as we certainly was around hay production and corn and those types of things. But I also worked in tobacco research the whole time I was a student at the University of Kentucky. So that's really all I know is agriculture. So that's what I've been around my entire life. And I am an owner and operator of a farm equipment dealership now. So I've been around agribusiness my entire professional career. And I guess you like to see things grow, and it's hard to give up the production part. So as we were talking about doing something on our little corner of God's acre there, we got into the Christmas tree business.
You mentioned that you were involved. It sounds like a lot of traditional agriculture, and you mentioned tobacco. I will not terrorize you by bringing up Dr. Neesmith's name. I don't know if you ever ran into him.
Yes.
I figured you had some dealings with him way back in the day in tobacco, but it sounds like you have a lot of great experience in traditional agriculture. And I'm always curious, especially with the Christmas tree growers, because it is a different sort of thing. It's got a longer payout, it's got a different kind of labor schedule. But what brings someone like yourself that's more familiar with the more traditional end of agriculture in Kentucky, what brings you to the Christmas tree end of things? Was it your wife's enthusiasm, or did you have to bring, or what was it?
No, that wasn't it. No.
Sorry.
No.
I always am
Immediately
curious
no.
about that. Immediately, no. Hard no.
Yes,
I heard that, yeah.
We both of us grew up in rural Kentucky, and living in Mount Sterling for raising a family. We lived about a mile away from Walmart and Kroger's and all those conveniences, of which we did not have growing up. And she was very accustomed to that. So it took me a little bit of prying to get her to move 4 miles outside of town. But then we started having the conversation as far as stewardship, and we had some land here, and we really should try to make the best use of it. She made me compromise on animal production, so there'll be no animals because of lifestyle and weekends and that kind of. I said, okay, that's all fine, that's all well. So as we started talking through some things, that's when the question, I knew that Dr. Moody was raising Christmas trees, and you don't have the problems with Christmas trees getting out in the road and stuff like you do with cattle, and so we met in the middle somewhere there. And like I say, part of the things which we also had to work around is we had the land. I do have availability to equipment. How do we make this work in our lifestyle? Because I don't want a farm market that's open 6 months a year. So the Christmas trees fit very well. It's a very closed retail market. It lets us do much of the physical labor on our schedule, so we can do it at nights, weekends, whatever we need to do there. So it really does fit into what we had going on. And then if you
Can I
watch a
ask you?
Hallmark movie, there's no Hallmark movies about raising pumpkins.
No,
That's right.
no. Yeah, that's
What
always
else?
it's always the pretty stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
What else was on the short list that got scratched off before you arrived there? Do you recall that? Maybe pumpkins is one of them.
We really what we had out there was this was all hay ground. Hay production is what the ground was being used for up to this point. But we had no desire to get into pumpkins, vegetables. We really did not have a desire to do that. So after she said we couldn't have livestock, that's really where it turned into put us
Kind of
into
steered the ship.
yes,
Yeah.
it sort of put us
Yeah.
into a corner there.
Well, some of those things, I mean, when cows need to be fed, they need to be fed, or milked when they need to be milked.
Yes. Yeah.
So it sounds like that it was is it fair to say, kind of a life fit for you guys, it sounds
Yes,
like.
exactly. Yes.
And I
It
hear
worked
that a lot.
because we already had the property.
Yeah.
And as you start to think about, if you have 10 acres and by the time there's a pond and there's our yard and the barn, and there's very limited how much land is there. So how much of an agriculture enterprise can you have on 5 acres of land? And Christmas trees actually allow you to have a decent amount of gross revenue coming off that small acreage. So there was a critical mass is the way I would put that terminology.
Yeah. It seems like so many times fit's very important all across the state in any ag enterprise, but specifically as you go towards more hilly regions, it has to be a fit for the land, not only a fit for the family, it sounds like for you guys.
Sure.
We talked to folks a lot about that and how it fits in with your family. And we talk about it's kind of like grapes and some other enterprises, apple trees, orchards and things. It does have a longer payout. So it sounds like, you guys made all those considerations when you were
Right.
thinking about getting into this. Yeah.
Yes.
Good deal.
With Christmas trees, it is not a huge capital outlay. If you already have the land, the commitment is more toward the labor that it's going to take. And that comes back to what's the management system that you want. And from our perspective is we wanted to keep it mowed down. We wanted to look attractive. We did not want briars and, things growing. So we do spend about 7 to 8 hours a week mowing. And that's really when the other question that came back up is whenever it turns 60 degrees, what's in your mind and go, oh no, we got to start mowing in about a month.
The sod is growing.
So I wasn't looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Because once we start, it's just what we do.
Don't
And
stop,
you still work in your fertilization and your tree shearing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I talked to a lot of folks who are like, oh, it's so little labor. We're into something that with very little labor. I'm like, well,
this is not it.
There's some labor involved.
Right. That's
There's very little horticulture that is as little labor,
correct.
at least as people want. There's a spectrum for sure, but this whole plant it and forget it timeline is not really what people think it is.
Yes.
Photos that you see online about all those different production systems in horticulture make it look often glamorous and easy, and
Very
you're just going out
Instagram-y.
there,
Yeah.
plant a Christmas tree, and then a couple years later just cut it down. That's it, right?
Hey,
Hallmark
So-
never shows that.
I'm blaming Hallmark for this and Lifetime TV.
That's
Yes.
right. They never
Getting
show the
married
mowing
or-
in the spring. They never
Yeah,
show any
no.
of that part.
No, we're shearing. They just show the mayor of a
That's
small
Praying for
town
spider
and
mites.
someone.
That's
that,
right. Somebody's
they
falling
never
in love, and there you have it right there.
But that's got to help with marketing, though, because
Yes.
it's one of those things. I know it doesn't sell itself. Christmas tree production, a lot of hard work, lots of sweat equity in there. But it's
A
one
lot of the
those
marketing
things that-
is being done, right? Like you
Positive
have to do
vibe.
some, but there's a
Sure.
lot more being done for you, I
lot
think,
of
in some
positive
ways
vibe.
than like a
Yeah.
cucumber is.
Yes. There's pictures painted in people's minds as far as going out to a Christmas tree farm because they see those things, and some people have that tradition, some people do not, and they desire to make that, and that's also part of the fun part of it is that it is 99% of the time it is the best environment to sell. People are happy to come and see you year after year. You start to get to know their families. It is a neat experience. So that part is very, very good.
So what would you
But you-
say you dislike about growing Christmas trees? Sounds like you all have made some, good decisions that makes it work for you, but what do you dislike about it?
Well, I mean,
Negative.
it's laborious. I mean, it's there's no
Mhm.
shortcuts. We do not
Mm.
have any hired labor, so it's me and my wife, and that's who's going to go out and the work has to get done. But that's agriculture, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
that's whether it's horticulture or just agriculture. The work has to get done, and I've never been one that works from 8 to 5, and you work until you get the job done, and so that's always been part of my mentality. So really, there's part of the most discouraging part. It's not necessarily a part that you hate, is whenever you go the effort of planting trees and you watch them die.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's the learning curve that you have, is that you try to figure out which species will work on the land which we have and under
Mhm.
the management which we have. Because we were talking about another grower just prior to going on air, and they have irrigation systems. I do not. So whenever we have this, 2 months or 6 weeks of
Mhm.
no rain, that's not the best on a lot of the things which we try to plant and grow there. So that's part of the big learning curve, is helping us come to the point of realization. I can grow this and this, but I cannot grow this and this.
Mhm.
So we were talking a little bit of the same thing about what we're growing, and um, the disappointment of thinking, hey, I can overcome my soil and I can
I'll plant
overcome the weather.
Colorado blue spruce
You
everywhere.
must you must well come to the realization of, no, you can't. So I'm
Well,
becoming more of a realist
Yeah.
okay.
in this
And so
process.
you started on a high point. Now you're at a real
Yes.
point. It sounds like. Well,
Yes.
well, on the vein of positivity, Alexis. I mean, you guys have several years under your belt now. I mean, are there some positive surprises or some things that's kind of growing in a certain direction in a very positive light? With the growing the Christmas trees that maybe you hadn't considered, or is just a kind of a real plus. As I mean, it doesn't matter bringing people to the farm or just the whole marketing end of things, the direct sales, just whatever. I mean, some things that have been kind of a pleasant surprise. I know there's lots of challenges each
Sure.
and every year with things.
It's an enterprise that what we have found is that people want you to succeed. Even the
Okay,
people who don't come and buy from you want you to succeed. Because they think it's a neat thing and they want it in
oh
the community,
yeah,
and so it's fun to have supporters, because often, in production agriculture in whatever form or fashion, you feel like you're out here on your own little plot and it's you against the world, and that's not necessarily the case. And I think you really see that in a lot of agritourism, and that's where we sort of put ourselves into that category, is people want you to be part of that community and they want you to succeed.
I mean, are you guys known as the Christmas tree people now there
Yeah,
locally?
yeah,
Yeah. Do
yeah,
you have a kind of a new title, it sounds like?
yeah.
In a
So
very
it's
good
We
way.
called
I
worse
mean,
things.
yes,
Yeah, we've
absolutely.
not gone down the path of the merchandising yet, but whenever people see the stuff that we wear, they want to know, where can I buy that? So that we'll probably get phased into that, because of the same thing, that people want to buy into those
Oh,
kinds of.
sure, and it's a local thing, and it's
It
awesome
is.
to hear that
It is.
it sounds like the community's kinda taking ownership with you of that as far as that goes, and that's awesome. Sometimes I don't think we focus on that enough. When you feel supported not only by the technical side of things, like the association and other help that you get
Mhm.
along the way, but just the community and the positivity that sort of brings. It's a very good point. Yeah, it's
Well,
great.
and there's even more to, really, when you come back and you see the programs that are available from the state to assist in diversifying agriculture. That's a big deal, because often it's the soybeans and corn now, and it used to be tobacco. Those bigger programs demanded the support, they demanded the dollars, and those things. Those need support. I'm not talking against those, but as we are trying to diversify into more horticulture type programs, those supports are needed as well, especially with the learning curves that most producers are trying when they're transitioning. For someone like me, which has been much more traditional in agriculture, but now we're trying to take on a different enterprise, which I have no background in. So it's a whole different set of knowledge and experience that you have to gain, and it's good to have those programs available.
Yeah. It's, interesting, yeah, your take on that, I love it.
So you were kind of talking about we've talked before, like I have some Christmas tree growers in my county, and like some of the challenges that they've had, especially with disease issues. Has that led you? I know they have been looking at more like unique varieties of trees to try to plant to like try to combat that. Is that something that you all are doing, or you might not have the same
Yes,
issues as they are having a lot of like Phytophthora issues going
we
on their
do.
property?
I get to deal with that on a very regular basis, and that's part of what we have to come to the realization when you're dealing with clay-based soils, of which that's what I'm dealing with. It was a little different experience when I worked at UK's research farms. Their soils are so
Oh,
different
yeah.
from what
spindle
we
top is
have.
like
That's
perfect, right?
correct.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
correct. So the drainage is totally different. Topsoils are totally different in the world that I'm living in. I'm working on very little topsoil, a lot of clay. And if you're trying to grow Fraser firs or really any type of firs, you're going to struggle. And I've struggled for 4 years. Well, guess what? In year 5 and year 6, man, I'm a lot smarter. I quit planting firs and my success rate's going up tremendously. So I'm dealing with Phytophthora. So I'm, there's no quick fix to that unless you all want to share that with me. I haven't found anybody that can tell me what that is, other than species selection is a big deal for us. That's how we're really dealing with it. Now, one of the things which I did last year is I have brought in some Turkish fir because they are supposed to be more resistant to Phytophthora. So I have a experiment of ongoing there on my own property. At this point, it's hard for me to tell how much I'm gaining there versus the death because of drought last fall. So I'm still dealing
Yeah.
with some issues there. But yes, we are looking at other species all the time because we are seeing weather variations from what we've had in the past. So we're trying to figure out what is going to be effective, what's going to work, and still deliver a product that the end customer is proud to put in their home. So yes, we are certainly experimenting with that as well.
Question about your planting time. So I know, in Kentucky, we normally tell people, at least for, most deciduous trees that they're growing, that fall is actually the best time to plant. But you're mentioning spring plantings. Is there a
Yes.
reason why? Is it just, what you prefer, or when things are available, or what's that look like?
The nurseries that we buy seed stock from seem to be more highly directed to spring planting than they are in fall. There are some who you can get fall, and I attempted to plant some a year ago this past fall. The survivability was not very good at all. Same thing. We were having these dry falls.
Yeah.
And so what we have found is that spring, if anything, it's too wet, but we have
Yeah.
moisture to get those plants. So they're dormant when we plant them. And then
Mhm.
we hope to have them in the ground before ground starts to warm up, and then we get good bud break, and we have successful growth taking off in the spring. So I know of people who do plant in the fall. Seem the things from from the nurseries up to the weather which we're having seem to be a little better aimed for our production for springtime planting.
Hmm.
If the weather,
Are you doing
we
any
start
type
getting,
of?
go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, are you doing any type of mulching on those first year plants just to try and even out the soil moisture, or you're just saying live or die, guys? Good luck.
Well, I have used wood chips in the past
Uh-huh.
on some. Same thing. I
Uh-huh.
just experiment with them, and I, for as much as weed control as much for that purpose as I was for moisture. I did not see a tremendous difference in the performance of what I saw on our property. So I have not gone past that. So there is the mentality among some growers that I sort of follow. When it comes to irrigation, in whatever form or fashion, dragging a tank around and pouring water to base the tree versus sprinklers versus drip irrigation. I've seen bits and pieces on all of those things, and I have done some of those things. Like in the fall planting, I did go out and water those because after you take the time, to me, it's not as much about the money as the labor.
Yeah.
After I go out there and sweat over these things to get them in the ground, I would like for them to live.
Right.
But anyway, so I have almost adopted the idea of if I want 50 to live, then plant 100. So because it's almost easier,
Sure.
and for me to figure out the investment of drip irrigation doesn't seem to make sense to me on my property.
What I love hearing you say is that you're experimenting, one, and number two, you're kind of running the numbers, right? Like you're saying,
Sure.
yeah, I could put in the drip, but I'm, you're I think sometimes going back to that romanticizing of farming in general, right? It's people forget it is a business, and so
Yes, it is a
you're
business.
taking that seriously, especially when you're looking at 8 years, 7 to 8 years, and return on investment there.
Yes.
Like that's huge. So it's just
Yes.
exciting when I get to hear a farmer like crunching the numbers.
Well, we did start with a business plan. We
Love
Yeah.
it.
this is not my
Speaking our
first
language.
business. This is what we do, but I still run it like a business
Love it.
because as we also, my wife and I, look at retirement upcoming, we do expect for this to be a viable, ongoing business, maybe after we do cut back on our professional careers to go this path.
Well, these people are plant nerds. I happen to be in ag economics, so I have different things that I tend to
Speaking
focus
of
on.
bringing us
So they're going to
down,
ask me about
Brett.
growing plants, and if I don't, but I did want to make sure we talked. You mentioned several times now the Kentucky Christmas Tree Growers Association. And I wanted to just hear you said you attended there when you first started, and I think you've been involved since then.
Yes.
I'm just curious, kind of what your experience has been. What if we have some aspiring Christmas tree growers out there listening in? Should they come and check out the association? What kind of stuff are you all thinking about in 2026 or beyond? I'd just be curious about that.
Sure. Whenever I joined the organization, there was I don't know, 20, maybe 20 member farms. And that's how we have membership, is by farm, not by individual. So if 5 people from a farm want to come, that's all great. Today we have 55 member farms. So we are seeing a growth in new individuals coming into production of Christmas trees. Now that because it actually changes the shift of what the organization is. And yes, we still promote production of Christmas trees. But we have a handful of veteran growers, and I'm talking about multi-decade type growers, people that have been around the block multiple times. And really what I have found is these are a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and they're very, very open to sharing that information with other people. So it's not like, well, this is a new farm, they're going to be a competitor to me. That's not the perception. So as we are up to 55 growers, what we really have to identify as an organization is, yes, we want to promote the industry, but two, we have to be the educational component. As much as we would like, and you can look at the staff at the University of Kentucky and Extension, it's never been that large of an industry to make it viable for the university to invest in staff the same way they do other enterprises. So we get that. We know that. So that's part of the charge that we have as an organization, is we have to offer that educational support to our growers as well. So that's where much of our meetings is tied around trainings. And farms, our local farms will host. We've got one coming up in March on planting practices. So there's supposed to be an actual mechanical planter there as well as hand planting. And so we can do some various training with individual growers to see what works for them. What are the best practices as far as root dips or those types of things, which we can talk about. One of the most intimidating things for most people is shearing. How do I trim that tree after I get it to start growing, and I still want it to look like a Christmas tree when I'm finished? Because hey, I've butchered them. That just but it's good to have those resources to help us learn, because none of us, or at least I didn't know anything about Christmas trees growing in the production side of them before we started. So I've leaned heavily upon these experienced growers, and as I'm learning, I certainly try to make myself available for other growers who are looking to maybe come out and visit the farm and look and learn on what we might be doing right and things you probably should not try to do.
It's an interesting component to the nature of the industry, is that even if you did look at people as a competitor, you've probably got a 7-year head start as far as if you're in
Yes.
production. So
Yes.
Yeah.
there's almost a different way of thinking about it in terms of the longevity of the industry and handing things off. Like I just, anytime that you start to have longer time horizons that you're thinking about, I
Mm-hmm.
think it just changes the nature of the conversation, and the that there is this kind of slingshot lag effect in terms of production, when you're going to get stuff out. So that's really cool to hear. And of course, we work a lot with the Kentucky Horticulture Council,
Sure.
and this association is one of a large number, actually, of grower associations that do a lot of support like this. So that's really cool to hear. I'm going to shoehorn in one more ag econ in this case question, and I'm curious. you've been in around this, and you're talking with lots of different growers. What do you see on the consumer demand side? Do they just want a beautiful, idyllic local Christmas tree? Do people come to you and they're quizzing you about the species you have available? I know there's all kinds of things like how, I don't even know. There's needle loss, and there's branch elasticity, and all these other
Sure.
things that factor in that we don't necessarily think about. As you're thinking about your consumer and you're thinking about the trees you're trying to grow for them, what are some trends or things you've seen about that?
Okay. Um, One, I think sometimes we have preconceived ideas in our minds. Um, from the perspective, if you go out and look at cut Christmas trees across the board, if you go to a big box store, they're pretty much all going to have Fraser firs. That's what they're going to have. And that sounds good. There is a farm in Kentucky who effectively grows Fraser firs in the Lexington market, and they do very good. He's an excellent producer. But when it comes back to soil types and those types of things, that doesn't work on our operation. It doesn't work on most Kentucky operations. So he's a wealth of knowledge. He's very open, and I'm very appreciative of this individual. But if I were to line up species in front of the typical producer and say, all right, here's a fir, and here's a spruce, and here's a pine, and if I ask them, most people couldn't tell me which one was which anyway, in reality. So sometimes they have a preconceived idea, but it's an idea. It's not necessarily based in reality. So this year, what I've for the last 3 years, I have brought in pre-cut trees from North Carolina. I brought in some Fraser firs just to help get people acclimated coming to our farm. This year, since we had trees available on a limited basis for someone to come out and cut your own tree, you come out, identify it, cut it, do all that deal. We had a number of people who were very happy, even though I didn't have fir trees. Not a Fraser fir. I didn't have any fir trees. I've got some Norway spruce and I've got some white pine. And we had the conversations. With Norway spruce, sometimes there can be issues with needle loss, but it is a rigid branched tree. And what I have harvested Norway spruce the last 2 years for my personal use, and I did not see those problems. Now, I'm also very diligent to talk to them about, you must keep this plant in water. You must do try to keep heat away from this tree. You must do these things. If you have a white pine, you may love the smell. All of those things. Just understand it's not the best tree to handle heavy ornaments. So you try to help them set their expectations on what the tree is. But I had people that were much more enthusiastic about going and cutting the tree than what species it was.
Yeah.
Which I'm very pleased with, since I have thousands of white pine and thousands of Norway spruce planted.
Yeah.
Now the other side of that is I've had landscapers who've come out and said, look, if you can't sell those Norway spruce, we'll buy them all from you for landscaping.
I was just going to ask if you
I'll have a backup if something were to not work out well there.
Yeah. How about
that's great.
Greenery?
Well, I just had one.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's okay. There's a really interesting parallel there, I think, with the wine industry in Kentucky, where people are used to, in the same way that they think, well, I want a Fraser fir because that's what I've gotten, before. They'll kind of roll into a Kentucky winery and say, well, I want a Cab Sauv. Can you grow a Cabernet Sauvignon? And the response is very similar, where it's kind of like, well, no, but if you like this kind of big body, bold red with this nice tannin content, and so maybe it's a decent amount of oak, try this other variety that we can grow here. And I think that that's a really interesting, because it gives them a little bit of a story that they can then take when they take that bottle of wine, or they have that Christmas tree set up at their house, to say, well, actually, I know a lot more about Christmas trees and wine now than you do, my guests who are coming over. Let me tell you about this experience I had out with Kenney, or with one of the wineries in town. And so I think that's a really cool aspect, because there's a little bit of an agricultural education component about locality and terroir and all those other fun things. But sorry, Ray, I cut you off.
No, not at all. I was just going to ask, you had mentioned balled and burlap, which I was kind of curious about if you're going to do any of that at all. I know digging's its own thing, especially Alexis, if you like falling in planting holes. I think some of us have done that have ran across Christmas tree farms, but it seems like a lot of the different operations I ran into, they didn't set out to do greenery, but that's become big. Are you guys thinking about any cut greenery in the future? Is that even a consideration?
Well, let me talk about ball and burlap to start with, because I'll have a couple of people, and I'll say a handful of people each year who call and say, do you have live trees? That's the way they don't really, and the problem that I've got is that by the time, if I want to go down the path of saying I want to get the equipment to start digging trees, and then I'm going to have to get a nursery permit, and there, these other caveats that go along with that, it doesn't make economic sense to me at this point. And if I get to a point to where I can't sell them as cut Christmas trees, which is plan A, then I have plan B to come back to if another year or 2 years, if I think that's not going to be a viable option. But it does not seem to be the case today. So I do not have a desire, because if I've already told you I don't have a lot of topsoil. The first thing I get to do if I start down that path is to start bringing in truckloads of topsoil, and then try to figure out how does that fit with the topsoil I already have, and then start making the soil amendments, and
a whole different thing.
A whole other game. So at this point, I'm not pursuing that. Your other question about greenery is this past year was the first year that we started making wreaths. So that I really wondered, how's this going to go? I just told you I'm a cow and tobacco guy, making Christmas trees. Fun. It was actually a fun deal. It was very successful for us on the limited basis which we started with. So I certainly think that is a very viable, continue to grow in the future. And we were able to work with some grants in order to help us even go down that path of doing that. So that's been very, very good for us. A lot of other tree farms in Kentucky have not been doing the value added, the greenery and wreaths. And if they can do that without having to make those strides, so that's great for them. But I think for most of us, as far as young, I'm going to say young farming operations, not young farmers, because I don't really fit that category either. But it can certainly be a revenue source to help make the overall enterprise work.
Definitely.
So doing that, this is specifically about this. So doing that, you're taking prunings from trees that are not yet ready to be sold in the meantime? Is that where that wreath content comes from?
Well, where I started at this year was I brought in pre-cut trees that need to be basal pruned. So as soon as I bring them in, I'm basal pruning them. I'm cutting the bottom of the handle off, and then I put my pre-cut trees in water. So they are in water the entire time they're on my farm, from the day they arrive until the day they are sold, to keep them as fresh as possible. So I have now the bottoms of these Fraser firs, which is quite a bit of greenery. And then what I've also then to add to that as I've gone out, I've got some Scotch pine. I've got some other things that some trees that, be honest with you, aren't the most pretty things in the world. Well, they will contribute to the enterprise when it's all said and done. So I go out and just collect some of that information, some of those that greenery. And one of the things which I found very interesting is I had customers there and said, "Would you like to make your own wreath instead of me make a wreath for you?" Well, that was the greatest thing. They really liked the experience of making for children, or making for their grandparents, that special touch of getting to handcraft these things for gifts. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways of marketing that. I know some people do wreath classes, but that there is a market for the experience. And I don't have a place for hay rides and all that kind of stuff, but these are certainly opportunities to bring experiences for those families.
What so many farms have figured out is that experience is worth, that's a revenue in itself. Yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
You mentioned some, using some of those funky trees or whatever, which makes me think of like deer issue. Do you have any wildlife issues and stuff like that? Because I know the growers that I work with, that's what they were using for some of their cuttings for wreaths and other things, greenery that they were selling this year were the ones that the deer had come and rubbed on and split all apart, or were really funky that they're like, this will never recover. Like, no matter what we do pruning wise, this is always going to be a really funky tree. And so thus those became the greenery ones.
That is a real issue with other farms. So I have my challenges. Thankfully, deer is not one of my challenges. So I have some wild land behind me, and they seem to be content staying over there. And there's not much cover for them on my side, so they tend to stay on the other side of the fence. So there's deer around, but I really have not had any problems.
Keeping things mowed probably helps a lot.
It does. Good and bad is it doesn't leave a lot of coverage for wildlife. That's true.
Yeah. It's one of those things that can, vole damage and all the secondary things. I
do have plenty of the mole problems. I get plenty of that.
Oh, yeah? Moles and voles? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I know we don't like to see, especially the voles. Moles are one thing and voles are another. Yeah. And keeping all those things down. Give the owls and hawks plenty of sight lines to come in and do their work. And I was worried when I was working with orchards or Christmas tree farms in the past when we get these snowy winters, because my goodness, I mean, voles especially, they'll get under that snow and they just have lots and lots of babies. And then we have to prepare for the fallout of that in scenarios like yours. And
Well, one of the things which I'm
issues.
trying to do is I'm also planning. Putting some post in for the purposes of providing purchase for birds, because if they want to come and land on the top of a tree, they will effectively break the leader out, and then you get to go back and fix it. So I'm making some places for those birds to want to come and sit rather than the top of the trees.
Good deal. So they can be your hunters and they get the benefit
That's
of
right.
not tearing things
Try
up.
to welcome them. Yes.
Yeah, good deal.
So
good deal.
as you kind of think about the Christmas tree industry in Kentucky in general, the organization, what would you say are some of the goals or initiatives that you guys have, 2026, 2027 timeline?
Part of the I think a real charge of our organization is that we have to help young farmers be successful. And that comes back to that educational component, is that if, because the first year we planted trees, we planted 1,100 trees, and had individuals, why did you start so big? Why didn't you just plant 100? And to figure out, well, if I planted 100 and they all died, I'd have quit. I wouldn't have continued. Well, I planted 1,100 and 900 done really well. So hey, let's just keep going. So that's where the educational is, that there are discouraging moments in any kind of an enterprise, and Christmas trees is no different. So if we help them, and I take that as a real charge, is that we have to be there to offer that support to help them make decisions on what will your soil allow you to do, what are the right species, how do you set up marketing, because as much as we may like to think, well, if we build it, they will come, that is not true. I don't care how great your Christmas tree farm is, if you build it and nobody knows about you, you will be unsuccessful. So there's marketing components that goes along with that as well. So that's really one of the biggest charges we have, is to offer these training opportunities, as well as these educational opportunities to invite people to come out to our farms. And I think that's also something we also have to help equip Extension with, because let's face it, what most Extension people are going to go with, who's calling the greasy, the squeaky wheel kind of a thing, who's making all the calls. Well, if you're looking for Extension to come out and to help me, most don't have that experience. So we have to sort of offer that to support people as well. But I think we have to grow together.
Well, what would you, as we kind of like wrap things up, what would you recommend a new grower? What would you recommend to a new grower as they start into this like journey of growing Christmas trees? Like, is there anything, you would avoid or look for?
They don't have trees in the ground?
Do they have trees in the ground?
Yes.
I guess maybe
Or haven't
before,
made that
right?
choice
It's like when we get that call of like,
Plant
hey, I think I want to grow
Christmas trees. What do I do?
I also appreciate earlier on when you were like talking about your acreage and what the reality you can grow. As I talked to somebody the other day who has a single acre and is wanting to do vegetables, fruit, and livestock. So,
sure.
So I appreciate that about what do you got to work with?
Yeah. I mean, it's a critical mass issue, isn't it? I mean, if you have 5 acres, you can say, well, I can run 3 cows. I can run 3 cow-calf units. Okay, well, I can't afford the fence. I can't afford the head chute. I can't afford any of the stuff, But so that's really, you do have to keep all that in mind. How do you make it work? If someone came to me and said, look, I'm interested in doing this, and I do get those phone calls, and I say, why don't you come out? Just come out. And then I'm going to introduce you to 2 or 3 more growers, and then I want you to go out there and go ask that same 1,000 questions that I ask. And go see how they do it, how someone else does it, and then figure out, will any of that work for you, and be realistic with them. Here's what it's going to take for you to be successful, and here's the work that's going to be involved. Help them open their eyes and just be realistic, so they're not enthralled by that hallmark moment, and you think that's all there is. There's more.
Are there within that conversation? Are there typically like some very common things that people hit it and they realize this isn't for me?
Well, I think it's the labor thing, because I really do try to be realistic with that. Is if you think all there is that, hey, I have to sell Christmas trees on Black Friday and, a couple of weekends in December, that's all there is to growing Christmas trees. Hardly that. what kind of land do you have? How much labor do you have to go alongside you? Are you willing to hire if that's what it takes? Because there is a time that you must have trees planted. There is a time those trees must be sheared. There is a time that you have to spend out there among them, evaluating, do you have a pest problem? Do you need water on those trees? You've just got to be out there. It takes time. And if you think you can just stick them in the ground in March and show back up in Thanksgiving and they're going to be ready to sell, there is no enterprise that works that way to my knowledge. So you just try to be realistic.
That is not the Hallmark line that I was fed all these years.
That's correct.
I just want you to know.
Well, I was checking to see when this episode was going to come out, and it's going to come out just in time to still register for the Christmas tree planting workshop that you mentioned earlier that's going to be in Shelbyville.
Yes.
And that is on Saturday, March 14th from 10 to 1. And if you are interested, anybody listening and registering for that, you can go to the CCD's website, which we'll have in the show notes. And if you go under the news and updates tab right there at the top, you'll be able to scroll just down a little bit. I think there's a couple news articles ahead of it for Christmas tree information, and you'll be able to click that and sign up for that. Is there a cost to that, Kenney? Do you know? I don't think
no,
there
there's
is.
not.
It's free.
There's not
Awesome.
a cost. The Kentucky Christmas Tree Association is helping to sponsor that. Just as the same thing, just let's make it available to as many people as possible. You certainly do not have to be a member of the Christmas Tree Association to be able to come to that. It's open if somebody is just exploring, as Jessica mentioned earlier, if somebody was just wanting to find out more, that's a good place to come out and to meet some growers and actually see what's going on and the best way to approach that.
Fantastic. Yeah, finding a community that's doing something you want to do or that you're trying to do is super important, especially when it's generally new to you and even when it's not and you just need somebody to complain to with.
I will still be there. So I'm going to the same training so I can air my grievances to the rest of them.
There you go. Go meet Kenney in person on March 14th. Therapy. But we appreciate you being with us, Kenney, and learn all of that about Christmas trees. I'm always fascinated